Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Common Sense Africa podcast. My name is Ugo Chukwunwokoro. I am so excited this morning to have our brother here, our brother that has been, though he's African American, but he's more African than a lot of Africans from the motherland. I'm talking about no other person than Dr. or Professor Akil Khalfani. Akil Khalfani, we know him as he pours libation during our functions, and he's a candidate for the U.S. Congressional District 10 in New Jersey. Dr. Khalfani, welcome to Common Sense Africa podcast.
Thank you, my brother. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, we're happy to have you. Dr. Khalfani, I do not know how much you know about Common Sense Africa podcast, but it's a platform where all people of African descent come together to discuss issues pertaining to Africa, how to unite, how to bridge the gap. You are a candidate for the U.S. Congressional District 10, and by the special grace of God, you win and you'll be a member of the Congress. How do you think, what are your plans to bridge that gap, to help bring people of African descent together? And especially to get our brothers and sisters in the diaspora, those from Africa, to begin to participate, to know that this election is equally for them.
Yes. So first of all, once again, thank you for inviting me. I'm excited.
Thank you for being here.
When I think about, I've been working, first of all, I'm a professor at Essex County College, right? I've been doing this for the last 16 years.
Wow.
And working to bring us together. So I organize a program every year in September during the General Assembly called Bridging the Gap.
Okay.
So we've been working on bridging the gap.
Right.
And I think sometimes we get confused on bridging the gap, right? That bridging the gap is actually multifaceted. So
Right.
it can be intergenerational. So we've done programs there.
Right.
We've done business, so business and labor.
Right.
We've done between folks on the continent and Africans in America, the African American community.
Right.
And we've done from folks in the islands, right? So we got a large number of people in South and Central America who are people of African descent
Right.
that we also need to bridge that gap with.
Right.
And so when we talk about that, it's about all of us collectively together.
Correct.
And so some of the things that I've been focusing on are looking at what are our common issues.
Right.
So some of our common issues are education,
Right.
employment,
Right.
housing.
Right.
We have all these kind of common issues, and then there's other issues that are specifically germane, maybe to the recent African from the continent who migrated here. So you
Right.
get immigration issues, right?
Right.
And so I've worked and fought on for those issues, like when you had the issues of TSP and other
Right,
things.
right.
But if we understand who we are collectively, then we understand that all of those issues are all of our issues.
That's correct.
And so that's what I've been pushing. And in Congress, I think we have the ability to connect those things. One is because I travel those places, right? I've been to Ghana, Nigeria,
Right.
South Africa, Botswana, but also Brazil
Right.
and Jamaica and other places in South and Central America, because when folks begin to see that there's somebody who can go those different places and greet them where they are,
Right.
Then we have another way we extend that olive branch
Right.
and make them understand that somebody is there as a consensus builder.
Right.
And that's my main thing, is that I don't care if Africans are Republicans or Democrats,
Right.
that we've got to bridge that gap in a way that we talk about how do we build consensus
Right.
based on our collective needs.
Right.
And so those are some of the things that I think that we think differently about, we develop a solution.
Right.
Because we spend too much time actually focusing on problems.
Right.
I wrote a book back in 2005
Right.
called The Hidden Debate.
Right.
And that book really was looking at the idea that our collective issues
Right.
are talked about and spoken about from the level of the problem.
Right.
And so then I argued that we really couldn't get to the solution because we focused too much on the problem and not let's fail at the solution for a change.
That's right.
If I'm gonna fail hard working on a solution.
That's right. And that's exactly why we have Common Sense Africa podcast. We don't want to dwell too much on the problems. We already know what the problems are.
Yes,
so we want the solutions to these problems. Earlier you made mention of things you've done, how you've traveled to Africa and the Caribbean, where our black brothers and sisters are also, and how you've gone to meet them where they are. in America, we've identified that there are so many resources amongst African Americans. Even the Africans that came or migrated from the continent, they've sharpened their skills.
Yeah.
They're doing a lot of good things that they couldn't do in Africa and all those things. So I know, for instance, like the Nigerians, that for a long time they've been able to produce the highest number of first degree, second degree, PhD holders amongst all immigrant population in the United States.
Right.
And they are doing enormous things. How can we, I'm talking about all the Africans, yourself, and all the African American leaders, how can we begin to harness, bring all those resources together for the benefit of Africa? How can we get, like I had a guest earlier, a medical doctor that was our guest. He did an episode about healthcare in Africa.
Right.
So I asked him, you guys, they work in all these big hospitals, all these big conglomerates of hospitals and all that. Why can't you build a relationship between them and Africa? So how can we get people to begin to trust each other, to begin to work together?
Well, I think first, one of the major pieces is learning to understand each other.
That's correct.
So, for instance, in January, I was in Burkina Faso.
Okay.
Right? I went to Burkina Faso to talk about how we work together, how that they can do so there, and how we're committed to helping in that regard.
Correct.
Right? And so then, once we see that I'm not your enemy, that I'm your brother, that another person is your sister, and we begin to release some of our attentions about the spaces that we reside in.
Right.
I think sometimes we get caught up on the things that, as African people, we've been through a lot of trauma.
That's correct.
And so sometimes that trauma, the things that have traumatized us as a people, linger.
Yes.
And if we haven't addressed it, then we can get stuck on what that trauma is. And I think we have to recognize it. No, we're not denying that it happened, but how do we use that as a space for moving us forward?
For growth.
Right? We've got to have growth. Right? We also oftentimes use the word that we're struggling. But I think that or that we're surviving. But I would think we need to move from surviving to thriving.
Right.
And it can't be an individual thing. I think this is the part where, you talk about a lot of Nigerians and other folks who've been, we have a lot of folks, African Americans, who've done well as individuals.
Right.
But therein lies our problem, is that individual piece, you can have a Jay-Z, and I'm not downplaying anything he's done. You can have an Oprah Winfrey, and I'm not downplaying anything she's done. But how do we galvanize our resources collectively?
Ubuntu.
Exactly.
Ubuntu.
And I think that in a Yoruba word, actually, that I think that helps us to think about it too, is Iwapele.
That's right. Iwapele.
So you have to have that sense of good character, right? And if that's at your foundation, then maybe you begin to think about what you do differently.
That's correct.
And so part of the thing that I do is when I go, I study a little bit of language. I don't know all of them, but I know a little bit of different ones. So when I was in South Africa, I studied Zulu. So ik kan praat verstaan een beetje Afrikaans.
There you go, brother. So now, I think it has a lot to do. You talked about trust earlier, So I think it has a lot to do. See, when the colonialists left Africa, they left us with a lot of confusion, division. They tried to
divide and conquer.
Divide and conquer. They tried to make sure that the Africans in the continent do not connect with the African Americans or with the Africans in the diaspora.
Right.
So they kind of like told a lot of lies. One of them, so that they will divide you. They will divide you because they know the African Americans in particular are acquiring a lot of skills.
Yeah.
They're becoming smarter. They're becoming smart. And they are afraid that if these guys, with all their intelligence, all the stuff, their skills, if they link up with Africans and become, reunite with their brothers and sisters, they're going to be strong.
Right.
So they started controlling the narrative so that whereby they make sure that the Africans from the continent don't trust the African Americans and vice versa. And they tell all kinds of lies. How do we, change that narrative? How do we begin, because we can collectively, we can do a lot. We can do a lot, and we can transform Africa.
No, so when you talk about that narrative, like a lot of my students, I've been teaching many students from the continent,
right?
And they'll tell me when their parents came here or when they came here from the continent, that they oftentimes were told, don't associate with those African Americans.
That's right.
And so that type of confusion harks back to the foundations of racism and white supremacy on the continent when you had the colonial thing. So if you have the intended division between the Yoruba and the Igbo, or the Zulu and the Ndebele, or the Zulu and another group, right? So the closer, that each of these types of conflicts are things that people put in people's mind, right? So when you go to I mean, if you think about what happened in South Africa in terms of their independence, right? That they had Africans from all over the continent where they went, but now there's this whole thing of Mkwete, right? Which means is the same as is almost called the N-word, right? But it means foreigner in essence. But this is this kind of divide and conquer thing, and kind of forgetting that you wouldn't have your independence if it wasn't for the brothers and sisters in Ghana and Botswana and Nigeria and all these places. And so but the same is true here, though.
That's true.
Right, so that when brothers and sisters come here, if you think about in the 60s, which is not too long ago, look at the immigration in the 60s and 70s and look at it today from the continent. It's tremendous, but it wasn't then.
Of course.
And if it wasn't for the struggles of the folks in the 60s who got beat over the head, who got put in jail, some of them are still in jail today.
Yes.
30, 40, 50 years incarcerated.
That's right.
But they fought for the people who came here.
People like myself.
Yes. Right. And so we've got, it's our fault, right, collectively, those of us who are educators and community activists, if we're not teaching each generation of folks that kind of understanding. And so when we go back to the continent, sometimes when we leave here, we have perceptions that they're backwards, or that they're this and that. Because once again, we're watching the same narrative that someone gave us. And so each of those cases, we've got to, the key, I think, is us as Africans developing our own narrative. We've got to develop our own story.
There you go. That's exactly what it is. Yeah. Because you can't buy that they're backwards, or they are this and that. Because again, going back to the Nigerians, like there's hardly a reputable hospital in the United States where you can find at least one Nigerian. Even all the institutions, in your school, if you go to Essex County College, you will see one, if not, it's not a Nigerian, it's an African. So as a matter of fact, in your school, we have a great African from Ghana, Dr. Zachary Yambert, and they named the building, So now we know that it's not about them being smart. I'm talking about folks from Africa or Africans in general being smart. It's because people are holding them down, either by the kind of government that they institute there, that make it hard for people to grow there, but now they come to America, they excel. So how do we kind of like begin to change that narrative, make that excellence that's been exhibited in America to also happen in Africa?
Let me put it in the context of me running for U.S. Congress.
There you go.
Right, so that as we think about me moving into that office, right? We're not saying when I move into the office.
That's correct. I like that.
On June the 7th.
Brother. That's correct. That's right.
when the people vote for me on June the 7th,
that's right.
We have this whole thing. I happen to have a little sign here I would like to share with the people.
Go ahead.
So when y'all come out and y'all see us on June the 7th, make sure that you vote.
That's right.
And you can look at the QR code on there, and it'll take you right to our website, www.akilkhalfani.com.
There you go.
And so, but in that context, the thing that I want people to remember is that as a congressman, you have the ability to work with folks around the globe. Right. So if we look at the power of this position, that we can influence decisions. I mean, I already travel around the world, right? I spent 5 weeks in China. I've been to South Korea. I've been to all these different places. But now, as we move into this position as a congressman, what we can do in terms of our influence for the folks around it, that people will listen more. And Martin Luther King Jr. Said that something I think that's powerful for what we need in terms of how we do this. And then he said we need a revolution of ideas, a revolution of thought, and that we need to change our thinking. So we're not going to get to what you're talking about in terms of solutions unless we as a people get to a place of talking about it from the point of how do we see ourselves and ourselves collectively in that space.
That's correct.
And when we do so, then we can actually do something different. But if we continue to see ourselves in this kind of colonial slave mentality type thing, then we're not going to move anywhere.
That's correct.
But as a congressman, I'm going to be pulling people together. I'm going to do something different than that's done by anybody that I've seen in this district. And that is that we're going to have mayoral roundtables. At least twice a year, we're going to put all the mayors for the 10th Congressional District together to talk to them about some stuff, right?
That's right.
We're going to pull in each of the municipalities, we're going to have town halls, right? Not just election time, but throughout the entire time that I'm in office, we're going to be having town halls in each of the municipalities throughout the year so that we can talk directly to the people. And I don't mean at the city council meetings. I mean having community-based organizations organized so that we're with the folks. And that's a very different approach.
That is wonderful. Also, brother, I know the folks already know that I used to be former deputy mayor of the city of Newark, New Jersey, and then we got a lot of Africans from the diaspora, African immigrants, to participate, and I believe it was on the strength of that I was appointed a deputy mayor then. So how do we? But I think the momentum has slowed down. How do we get our people to come back? I'm talking about the African diaspora from the motherland to know that they can't do much if they don't participate. Select somebody that they think, that they know, that will protect their interests, that will work towards the things that they believe in. What can you say? What can you say to those?
I say that's why the people that I've been encountering, they resonate with what we've been doing. Because they know that for the last 16 years that I've been a champion of African-related issues. I've been a champion of African people. And as a congressman, we have to look at all people's issues. So I'm not confused. But oftentimes when somebody gets in that position, they forget about us.
That's right.
And that's not what's going to happen under my administration. Right? And so that knowing that we've got to have a holistic approach. Right? And making sure that our people understand that they got somebody in there who is their man.
That's
right. And addresses the entire national issues, but addresses the issues of African American and people of African descent, widely speaking.
One of the things that bothers me, I'm glad you brought that up. You see, every time they talk about reparation to the African Americans that have gone through trauma like nobody else in this world has gone through. Slavery is a heinous, is a bad, it's a terrible thing.
Yeah, we were chattel.
So now, when African Americans talk about reparation, America doesn't want to hear that. But then I was just wondering, Ukraine war, Russia war is happening. America is throwing all this money here and there, giving them money. I'm like, you have your own people. Why can't you resettle, reorganize the African American that you destroy their lives through racism and slavery and all those things? Why is it so hard? It goes back to the same narrative. Just put them down. We don't want them to be productive. We don't want to go get a good education. We don't want to, so that they don't compete. What is it? Why is it? White America doesn't want to do this the right thing.
Yeah. Well, I'm a professor of race relations. I've been talking about race relations for 20, almost 30 years. And we look at the legacy, the impact of slavery and colonization. We look at not just slavery, you also have to look at the impact of the whole Jim Crow, right? And the convict leasing. All of these things that have happened, and the destruction of the educational systems. Right, so if you look down at Prince George County in Maryland, when they were forced by legislation to integrate, they ended the school system. So my thing is that we've got to talk about that and address that in such a way that that reparations becomes a non-issue. I don't necessarily, I haven't pushed this so much during this particular campaign, but I think it's something we're going to revisit. Right now, what I'm focused on is really kind of three pillars, right? We're looking at the economy, recovery, and equality. So it fits in there. You see what I'm saying?
That's right.
But these three issues, I think, will resonate with the people in such a way that it helps folks to understand that the economy, although it addresses other folks, it also addresses us as people of African descent. And we've got to make sure that those issues get attended to. Right? Recovery, we're all affected by it. We're still trying to get, you look at the businesses around. People trying to get the businesses back on par.
Of course.
Right? And when you talk about equality, some people want us to just talk about equity, and I understand the difference between the two. But the reason I say equality, because not everybody is clear on what it means by equity.
That's right.
And so then when you say equality, they tune and they understand, and then we can broaden our discussion to include these other issues.
Right.
And so if we are not creating a space where folks understand that there's got to be some retrospective looking at the past, then we're bound to repeat it.
Of course.
And this is happening right now with voting rights.
That's right.
You see, if you look at if we don't look at what happened with voting rights, the right to vote is enshrined by the Constitution.
Right.
But all the extra legal measures that were taken is the reason why the Voting Rights Act happened in 1965.
Exactly. Not just even voting right. You talked about earlier when they wanted to desegregate the schools and all that, they stopped the school system. It's happening now. Because in Texas, they're pulling out books. They're pulling out books. In Florida, they're doing the same thing. They're disrupting the school system because now the school system is like about to teach the real deal, the real America, the real issues. What brought us to where we are now, what we're suffering now, So it is happening now. So if you don't revisit that, if you don't teach these things, it's bound to happen. So
but if we don't have an advocate in Congress who will argue vociferously for the point, then we end up in a weak position because it comes up and there's nobody willing to take a risk.
That's correct.
Right. And so my thing is that we've got to always do what I call having courageous conversations. Right. That means that you're having a conversation that's not comfortable.
That's right.
And if we really hope to build consensus, that's where we actually have to start. Right. So that I have to be willing to talk with you something about that you want that I'm not maybe interested in, but we're willing to have a dialogue enough to address that issue.
Of course.
And most of the people, they want to stay right on their side of where it's comfortable for them.
And do you know that's the reason why America is still having racial discrimination, racial problem, because there has not been a dialogue. You talked about dialogue. The same thing is happening in Africa. Africa is going through the exact same thing because Africa was founded when they divided and conquered different nations and bundled them into countries that they never discussed how to live together, how to form a new nation.
And they never were those countries in the first place.
There you go. And so that's why it's not working. So America, for the very first time that more people are beginning to participate in American democracy, it's no longer in those days when all decisions were made by white men, white landowners and all that. Minorities are beginning to participate, to enjoy some of those rights. And that's why the American democracy is shaking. so Brother Khalfani, I know this it's been interesting. I think we're probably going to have a sequel after the victory, after the election, so that we can come and celebrate. Before we close, I wanted to look at the camera, talk to our viewers, tell them why they should look at you, why they should consider you, why you think you can make a difference.
Well, first I want to say thank you again.
Thank you
for inviting me here.
Thank you,
and thank the folks in the audience for tuning in and listening to this conversation. And so I want you to understand that I'm first and foremost a humble servant of the masses, and I'm here as a servant leader to provide some voice for people in Congress and to make sure that your people are represented, and that on June the 7th, the person that you will elect will be the person who is going to argue for the issues that you're concerned with, who is going to continue to educate himself and the people about it. That we want to make sure that people understand how government happens and that we share with folks about that process. What's the difference between the federal, the state, the county, and the local government? And how does the federal government divvy up its resources to make sure that they get where they need to be? I'm going to fight to make sure there's more transparency, right? So that the money that's supposed to get to where the people are actually gets there. I'm going to fight for efficiency to make sure that you don't have to call on the phone and it takes 2 days for you to get through to just to get some simple information. We've got to improve those kinds of things because that's what we have the resources to do, but we haven't been doing. So that I want to create a space where the needs and the concerns of the people are actually adhered to. And that's why we should be in office. And if we're not doing that, if I'm not doing that, then kick me out after I get there. But I'm going to be the one that's fighting for those things that people haven't fought for and to uplift the community. And those are the things I think we need to think about is that do we have somebody who's the voice for us? Do we have somebody who is willing to take risks for their own political future for the people? Or are they willing to fight to bring the resources, financial and other resources, for the people? Are they willing to fight to bring in the types of jobs that people need and make sure that housing is secured? Right? Those are things that are not, housing is not a privilege. Healthcare is not a privilege. Those are rights, and we should make sure that they're enshrined in the way that the U.S. operates, not just in the documents, but in the operation of those things itself. And I'm the person that's going to fight for that for the people. So come June the 7th, I need your support to get out to the polls. Go tell your people about it. Check us out at www.akilkhalfani.com. You want to get in touch with us, make sure you send me something at info.akilkhalfani.com. And if you do that, then you're going to see that the people who you are putting in office are going to be different than the people who've been in office supposed to be representing us before. And I don't have anything against people personally, but the thing is that, are you doing the job that the people put you there for? And I'm someone who's been doing the job of the people, and I'm going to continue to do it on another level in U.S. Congress.
Thank you, Brother Khalfani. Thank you. Well, viewers, you've heard him. For me, it's not just about whether you're voting for him or whoever you're voting for. The important thing is for you to participate. You must participate. You must vote. You must let your vote count. Make sure you look at the candidates. Consider their manifestos. Consider what they say they will do. If those that are there already, have they done it? Those that are going it, consider. Look at all that they said they will do, and then you vote accordingly. But the most important thing, especially you, brothers and sisters from the continent of Africa, you must vote. Please stop ignoring elections. It is very, very important. Go and vote candidate of your choice. Candidate of your choice. On that note, thank you very much, Professor Akil Khalfani, for joining us. And I wish you success in your election.